Steven and I are talking in LA, and I don't even know how this came up, but in the middle of the conversation, Steven goes, "Oh yeah, but my failure team does that."
Oh.
And I paused for a second. I said, "What did you just say?" He said, "Oh, my failure team does that." So I've been waiting to ask you about what a failure team is and what they do at your company.
Yes, so I think really important. I actually think if there's one principle or idea or concept that underpins the relative success that we've had on our show, it might be this, which is, okay, so the background context and the thinking underneath this is to understand the correct answer to anything in life, whether it's in your marriage or relationship or on your Instagram page or TikTok or whatever it must be. You need to get information. So the next question becomes, what's the best way to get information in a world where the correct answer is changing at an increasing speed? Like if you listen to some of the futurists out there, they say that if you're 40 now, by the age of 60, you'll experience a year's change at today's rate of change in about 11 days. Things are getting faster. That's what history shows us. So to think that you're going to get the right answer to the key questions you have about your products, your business, your audience, whatever, from reading a book that takes 2 years to publish and another year to write is not smart thinking. You're also not going to get any of the right answers from someone like me, because by the time I've made it up onto stage and then you've implemented it for yourself, the blueprint has probably somewhat expired. So the best way to get answers to the questions that matter to you is to increase your rate of experimentation and failure. Like, and we all intuitively know that run an experiment, failure equals feedback, feedback equals knowledge, and knowledge equals power. But when you look at how the world's best companies are built, that's exactly what they do. They kill the guesswork. They build systems to ramp up their rate of failure so that they ramp up their rate of relevant feedback. And so when you look at a company like Amazon, for example, Jeff Bezos says in his shareholder letters, in order to be the company we want to be in the future, we have to be the best place on earth to fail. And the crazy thing that happens is you'll all relate to, if you've ever worked in a big business or really even a big team before, is as people achieve things and they have more things to lose, the psychology shows they go risk off and they go into loss aversion, they experiment less, get less innovative, and that's the start of the end for those people, those creators, those companies. So if we're going to be successful because we had a high rate of experimentation, how do I maintain that and increase it when all the incentives suggest that we should go risk off? And that's why we have an experimentation and failure team. We have a head of failure who leads that team called Grace Miller. And her primary objective is to increase the rate of failure. Notice I'm not saying the rate of success, because if it's an experiment, you don't know the outcome. So you don't incentivize people based on how it's going to, how on the outcome, because that's not in their control. The controllable part is, can we run more experiments? So that's what you incentivize. And if you start messing around with the output, you'll disincentivize productive behavior. So that explains it. And like, what does this mean in reality? It means this team is responsible for making sure that all of us in all the teams, production, if I'm talking about like the podcast business, production, the thumbnail team, it could be the e-commerce team, it could be the recruitment team, are constantly, culturally, ideologically driving the rate of experiments. If they've got any issues, if they've got questions that they don't know how to answer, if the experiments they're running aren't scientifically rigorous, so they're changing too many variables and we won't be able to trust the results, they create rigor across the board and they report on how much we're driving experiments, and they do experiments themselves. So, one thing that springs to mind, just because it's such a big thing for everybody in this room in a world of AI, is language, for example. So many years ago, about a year and a half ago, we first started doing the podcast in multiple languages. Before multi-language audio, we started doing it with Spotify. And it's taken them about 12 months of experimentation, but we figured it out. And now the AVD in other languages is higher than English, which is like slightly offensive, but whatever.
Изучайте языки, смотря фильмы и сериалы.